we've now got time for a few minutes of questions before we come to the next speaker. Please put your questions in English, Norwegian, Hindi, any other languages. We can't guarantee that anyone will be able to translate. We have a roving mic. It's a roving SEAD, actually. Who would like to put the first question? Man at the back.
Up there.
Hi, I'm studying agroecology at the Norwegian University of Life Sciences. And my question is, Monsanto and some of these other companies are making claims about producing seeds and varieties that are resistant to drought and salt and other environmental conditions, but also that they're producing seeds and crops that will have higher levels of vitamin A and other essential nutrients. What comments do you have about that? And do you think that these are realistic? And do you think that this is in some way going to, is it their way of trying to say that we're balancing out, you know, and doing good for the poor farmers and trying to, you know, counteract malnutrition, et cetera?
In the case of the climate-resilient traits like drought tolerance, flood tolerance, salt tolerance, these traits have already been bred by farmers. Now, most people in the world don't realize that they are salt-tolerant seeds. In Navdanya, we've saved them. We've distributed them after the Orissa super cyclone, after the tsunami. Every year there's a cyclone. There's a Lila now. Last year there was an Isla. The salt-tolerant seeds exist. They're not being invented by these companies. And I think that's the most important point. Farmers have bred these traits. The companies appropriate them and patent them. There is a so-called corn, a drought-resistant corn that Monsanto claims it will be out by 2012. And the problem is this drought-resistant corn survives a drought but fails in a good year of rain. Because there's something called a pleiotropic effect, where the metabolism of the plant is affected and its ability to be resilient and have a very large ecological niche is seriously hampered. So on these issues, through genetic engineering reaching these traits, it's still a promise in the make. As far as the issue of nutrition increase, like vitamin A, more iron, etc. in crops is concerned, because the measures are reductionist measures, you know, you take potato, you empty it out of the nutrition that Andean potatoes, for example, have, and then in a denutrified potato, you add 2% protein and you say, I have more protein. In the case of the genetically engineered golden rice, what they had achieved the last time they published results was 34 micrograms of beta-carotene, which is the precursor of vitamin A. Most foods we use for vitamin A in India, like the coriander, like the fenugreek, like the leaves of the sehjan tree, or the curry leaf, have 1,700 micrograms. Yeah? So we are talking about diminishing the availability of nutrition in biodiversity. And that's why the comparison of these promises always has to be in the context of the full alternatives that are there, both in our farms as well as in our cuisines. And we can't afford to narrow our vision and say, oh, rice. You don't go to rice for vitamin A first. And we have a red rice in the Himalaya that we have conserved. It has 40 micrograms compared to the genetically engineered rice, which doesn't have that much vitamin A, but it has 80 patents associated with it. So it's a very tedious way to solve the problem of hunger and malnutrition. We have simpler ways, low-cost ways, and as I always say, I would rather give seeds of vitamin A-rich crops and iron-rich crops to women for home gardens, and tomorrow you can solve this problem.
there's a couple of hands up over here, so if you... a couple of people had their hands up over there before.
Thank you very much, Vandana. I would like to focus on the Norwegian question, because you said that perhaps Norway and the Norwegian government has a very great role to play now in changing some of the development in using this hybrid seed. I just want to ask you, the Norwegian government are concerned about child labor. That is their main kind of focus on finding out if they want the Norwegian bank to withdraw their investment or not. We have just seen a movie this morning, and it ended up that the Norwegian government found out it would be better to keep in contact and not withdraw the investment, but in some way to train and to make the leaders of the Monsanto to understand that they shouldn't use child labor. I would ask you, what would you really think that the Norwegian government should concentrate on? Should it be child labor, or should it be some of the very important questions that you have raised? Thank you.
Well, you know, for me it was a surprise when I heard that in the context of Monsanto the issue was child labor. Because we in India, who work on issues related to agriculture, issues related to human rights, none of us ever raised that issue. So where did it come from? What we were raising always was farmer suicides. What we were raising was the threat of monopoly. Today, the government of the United States is having to raise the threat of monopoly. I know the Norwegian government was holding back because it didn't want to step on the toes of the US government. Well, it should use the antitrust case of US to raise the issue of monopoly. There is this issue that because of the way the ethical concerns are laid out, it has to be related to violation of law. But this environmental law being violated, the biosafety laws, there is human rights law being violated. There's a UN Declaration of Human Rights. In India, we have a law, our constitution has an Article 21 on the right to life. If a farmer is losing their right to life because of the debt, and the debt can be shown directly connected, 84% suicides we have studied, 84% were directly connected to indebtedness caused by the BT cotton. That's a violation of a fundamental human right law. So I don't think it's one issue, because so many laws are being violated. The issue of the integrity of science, very, very important ethical concern. And I feel out of this evening, out of this panel, a group of citizens and a group of the sponsoring organizations should really make a list, and maybe people like Elizabeth Iyer need to go educate that there are other laws like biosafety, there are other laws like intellectual property issues. Look into the full spectrum of the harm being done. And we are not talking about trivial things anymore. We are talking about the fact that if this monopoly, and a monopoly not just linked to something good, but a monopoly linked to risk, spreading risk that can't be recalled, is allowed to grow, within 5 years, there will be no independent seed supply left. Just the other day, because the Greeks put a restriction on the diabetes drug, the company has withdrawn the drug. Now, Indian governments are putting a restriction on